Hi, everybody. Bryan Norcross here with a noon update on this developing tropical threat for Florida. And indeed, this is really significant, and it's really important that everybody, especially on the west coast of the state, pay close attention here because this is going to come on fast, and this has the potential, in fact, I would say the likelihood, that for some parts of the west coast of Florida, this is going to be worse than Hurricane Helene, and maybe significantly worse in terms of the height of the storm surge, not to mention the wind impact, which will be significantly worse than Helene in some part of along some part of the west coast and over the Florida peninsula. So there's a lot to talk about here. Here is the system, Tropical Depression 14, at 11 a.m. this morning Eastern Time. The Hurricane Center designated this component of this large area of low pressure we've been talking about that was going to move into the Gulf of Mexico, and we thought it would be elongated, and that there were going to be maybe two centers, and we'd have to watch it because it would take time to consolidate. But indeed, it's consolidated over here on the west side as the tropical depression that was in the Pacific kind of made it over Mexico and came up here and contributed to it. Also, this disturbance that we were watching in the Caribbean kind of got there, and this area of disturbed weather in the Gulf all together came together over here, and indeed is now developing and is very close to being Tropical Storm Milton. It's just drifting around right now, no significant movement, and 1,007 millibars. All right, let's look at it close up here. There's where the National Hurricane Center located the center as of 11 a.m. Indeed, if we look at the low clouds down here, we can kind of make out they're doing this. That is the rotation of the system. And they kind of spread out here. This eastern side of the system, there isn't really much to it. But the thunderstorms are indeed intensifying and percolating here on the western side. And as it develops, they'll try and wrap around here, and that'll be a sign that we're moving toward a tropical storm and eventually, indeed, a hurricane. All right, so here are the way the model analyzes the winds, and you can kind of see they bulge out here on this side and then come around it over on this side, on the left side. They're tighter, but the main thing to notice here is notice the purples in over here, and the purples are 30 to 40 miles per hour. So that's why the Hurricane Center has 35 as the nominal current wind speed, and we'll watch as the reds come out here as it does intensify. All indications are that that's going to happen. All right, so here's the cone, and here's the indication right now. The first cone from the Hurricane Center, always subject to change with any developing system, of course. Saturday p.m. means Saturday evening Eastern Time, nominally 8 p.m. It would be a tropical storm at that point, Tropical Storm Milton. And then tomorrow, intensifying tomorrow morning and tomorrow afternoon, continuing to intensify as it moves off to the east slowly. But this is all very slow movement here, so it's just kind of gathering itself through this period. Now let's go forward in time. The current forecast has it reaching hurricane strength Monday morning, and you can see the distance between the lines here, between here and here and here and here. Notice they get wider. That's the now hurricane speeding up during the day on Monday, so that it's forecast to be a Category 2 hurricane, 110 miles per hour by Tuesday morning. And in terms of the upper atmospheric conditions and general environment there, the most conducive for strengthening part of the Gulf is somewhere in this area here, where it's going to be Monday into Monday night, maybe into Tuesday. Then the question is, how intense is it going to get during that time? Because as it gets closer to Florida, later Tuesday into Wednesday, then the upper level winds and so forth become more hostile. So the intensification process should arrest at that time. And that's why they still have it at 110 mile per hour hurricane somewhere near the west coast of Florida in the morning hours, nominally 8 a.m. Eastern Time on Wednesday. Now, exactly where it is, we don't know at this point, but the bottom line is wherever the center of it comes ashore, everywhere to the south of there is going to have storm surge, and some areas significant, dramatic storm surge like we haven't seen in modern time, as a matter of fact, if the system really does intensify. And if they forecast a Category 2, of course, you always get ready for a Category 3, and some of our best computer forecasts are up to Category 4-ish strength. So the potential is there, but pieces always have to come together in some kind of way, and boy, do we hope they don't, because we have obviously a tremendously vulnerable coastline there with people that have just suffered from Hurricane Helene. So who's going to get the worst of it? There is no way to know, but everybody from the Big Bend, say the Cedar Key area down south to the Keys, needs to be ready for a storm surge event coming the middle of next week that will likely require evacuations and so forth. This is going to be a fast-moving event with a lot of communications coming, so everybody needs to be well aware. How about here in Southeast Florida, the most populated part of the state, Miami, Fort Lauderdale, up to the Palm Beaches? There will be effect from this, and we'll talk about the rain in a moment, but there are two parts to it. One is the rain that begins tomorrow, and then the rain and the storminess that comes with the storm itself. Obviously, it depends on where the center tracks on the effects down here in Southeast Florida, but there is certainly potential for effects, although as you'll see, there is dry air involved, and that might help the southern tip of the state. All right, let's look at what the model says here in terms of the moisture and in terms of the various model tracks, just so you can get an idea of the consensus level at this point. Here we are, we're looking in the upper left here at where we stand. So this was this morning actually, and there's where we're located now. Notice there are two clusters of moisture. One is over in here, and the other is associated with the storm itself, and then the brownishness is dry air. So we have a front up to the north, and it's super dry all up in here, and there's some dry air down to the south as well. But keep in mind the two bundles of tropical moisture. Notice the flow is from the south all over here, so that's going to bring in tropical moisture into the system and into this secondary system, we'll call it, technically a predecessor event for the main storm. Okay, moving ahead in time now, slowly, it moves tomorrow into Monday morning. The GFS has it here as a developed storm. Notice we have heavy rain over the state of Florida into the Bahamas, still this sort of dryness in here. And another thing to notice here, before we look at the other models, notice there's kind of a dividing line in there between the strong flow up here and then the southerly flow down here. That's kind of a front that's hanging in there, and that'll come into play a little later on. And when you get a front and you get tropical weather, you get enhanced rainfall. So this is going to add to the rain threat across Florida. All right, the European model, known as the ECMWF, essentially the same kind of forecast. The AI model is a little bit faster, so we'll be ready for that possibility, although the Hurricane Center is going to go with the GFS and the European on timing, and the Canadian model is essentially the same. All right, this is Monday morning, remember. Now we'll move ahead to Tuesday morning, and notice that the European and the GFS are very similar. Indeed, an intensifying storm at that time. New GFS just coming in, not reflected here, has it intensifying significantly here on Tuesday north of the Yucatan, and the European shows intensification as well. The AI model speeds it forward a little bit. Again, we're going to be ready for that to happen, for it to come a little ahead of forecast, as we always need to be. And the Canadian lingers it back here. Is that impossible? No, but it's kind of an outlier in that idea. Also want you to notice this dry air that's trying to get pulled up out of the Caribbean, and notice this front bearing down from the north with this dry air pushing in fall weather all along the Gulf Coast up there. Okay, going forward in time now to Wednesday morning, the AI has it all the way through. Notice all these fronts are involved. Here's the front that I was talking about that is going to enhance the rain in Florida. But notice what's happened by this time. This dry air is forecast to wrap around in here. And the thinking is that that might either stop the intensification process or start a weakening process during the time that it's approaching the Florida West Coast on Wednesday. So as you saw, the Hurricane Center held it at 110 miles per hour as opposed to continuing that intensification. The other thing, though, that comes with that is if it does start to become a sort of non-tropical system at that point, that would spread out the winds and that would increase the storm surge. So this is not all good that this transition involving fronts and dry air and upper level winds and so forth might impact it about the time it gets to Florida. There you see the upper level winds, and look over top of it, this dip in the jet stream here, that's going to provide some energy to it, but also probably spread it out and weaken the peak winds, the top winds in the system. But we'll see. In any case, you don't get all hung up on the meteorology here. The main thing is that a significant storm is forecast based on everything we know to impact the west coast of the state beginning Tuesday into that Tuesday to late Wednesday time frame on the current schedule. Here are the various computer models, just for completeness. Really doesn't show you anything different. The main one we want to always look at is the consensus. But remember, for any developing system, the models are going to jump around. The consensus will move up and down. But the consensus is what the National Hurricane Center uses for their cone. And that's why the cone obviously puts the threat zone for the entire west coast of Florida, bearing in mind that if that's where the center went, this Southwest Florida would be extremely threatened, and the Keys would have a significant storm surge threat. If the system comes up here, then Tampa Bay is involved in a dramatic storm surge event that would be far exceed Hurricane Helene. But we just don't know where that center line is going to be, and it's the areas to the right of the center line that we are most concerned about. So that is the Florida threat. Let me just mention the Florida wind and the storm surge threat. Mention the rain here. The forecast is for 5 to 8 inches of rain in a lot of Florida, but and some areas with a foot. Out in the Atlantic, all those strong hurricanes out there are moving north, and if this one develops, it's going to move north as well. No threats there. Kirk could end up being a significant storm for Northern Europe or the United Kingdom. We'll see, but that's on down the road. Obviously, this tropical depression over here, now Tropical Depression 14, is our concern. If you are not watching Fox Weather, I'm on Fox Weather, and you can just go to foxweather.tv, and they'll tell you exactly how to get it on your TV. It's a free channel. You don't ever have to pay anything. You don't have to have cable service. You don't have to have anything. Foxweather.tv tells you about your TV, your phone, your iPad, and your computer. You can watch the channel anytime. And of course, foxweather.com has lots more information as well. All right, we'll keep you up to date there and right here. And everybody on the West Coast, unfortunately, this is going to be another round of very difficult decisions and a lot of information. We'll see you again soon.